my name is Casey and I thought it would be fun to share my favorite books of 2025 and also briefly discuss my 2026 reading plans. So my voice is a little bit scratchy because I woke up this morning feeling a little bit sick, so hopefully that doesn't bother you too much, but I want to first go through my general 2025 reading statistics, which I'll be using Storygraph to go through. I used to only use Goodreads to track my reading, but this past year I decided to start using Storygraph as well, so I've been using the two apps kind of in tandem, but I do want to move to Storygraph completely. I just have so many books on Goodreads that I tracked as want to read, and I didn't transfer the data over. But in the future I'll definitely use Storygraph exclusively. So 2025 was a really good reading year for me. I read 27 books, which is the most I've read in recent years. And the number one genre that I read was literary fiction. And this is not a surprise to me because I love character-centered books. I like plot-centered books as well, but character studies are some of my favorite things to read. After that was classics and then contemporary fiction. So this year, from 3 authors, I read 2 books from them. It was Haruki Murakami, R.F. Kuang, and Mieko Kawakami. And my average rating for 2025 was 3.8 stars, which I think is really good. And looking back, I think that does reflect the books that I read, because I was able to read from authors that I wanted to read for so long and books that I've been waiting years to pick up. So I think almost every single book that I read this year was a good choice by me. Yes, it says here that I read 23 new authors, which is so amazing. I had one DNF this year, and this was a soft DNF, so it's a book that I'm definitely going to come back to. It was Martyr, and I started this at the end of the summer, and I wasn't able to continue reading on it because I was beginning my senior year of high school, and I chose some really hard classes to take this year, which I don't regret, but it definitely heightened my workload. I was also working on college applications during this time. So I was just really busy and really stressed, and the only books I was reading during this time was for my literature class, which is why classics became my second most read genre. So overall, I read the most in the first half of the year. My pace in reading wasn't all that consistent because most of it was in spring and summer, but I think next year hopefully I can continue a steady pace of reading. But now let's go on to the top 10 books I read in 2025, and I actually only have 2 of them physically because I get most of my books from the library. And also I wanted to note that not every book on this list is one that I've rated a high rating, because the books on this list are books that have impacted me the most and books that I continue to think about. So even if another book I rated higher but I didn't put on this list, it's likely because the story hasn't stuck with me as much. And the first book at number 10 is a prime example of this. It is What I Talk About When I Talk About Running by Haruki Murakami. This is the only nonfiction book I read this year, and it's Murakami's memoir. It details his relationship with running and what inspires him to run and why he continues to run even as he is getting older. It also kind of connects running to writing, because us, we view Murakami solely as a writer, but he kind of shifts the focus on him being a runner and a writer because they're his top 2 passions in life. And he even goes into how running and writing is similar, because as much as writing is a physical challenge, it is also a mental challenge as well. And he says that writing a novel is almost like writing a marathon. You need to keep up that endurance and steady pace to make progress, and you can't give up. And after I finished this book, I only gave it a 3 stars, but I just keep on thinking about it, and I think it's because Murakami was just very honest in this book, and why he continues to run was very inspiring to me. I even wanted to start running after this book. So that book was at number 10, and I'm going to go from least favorite to most favorite out of my top 10. The next book was also a Murakami book, and I want to preface this by saying that I am aware of the critiques of Murakami's portrayal of female characters through his male characters, and I've heard both sides of the argument, people saying it's not a reflection of his views, but it is important to note that almost all his male characters, is from what I've heard, these are the only two books I've read from him, is that they have very perverted views of the women characters that are presented in the novel. And I think if each character in every single one of your books is like that, that does present a problem. But that's all I'm going to touch on that topic. I just thought it was important to recognize. So Norwegian Wood was kind of a similar case to what I talk about when I talk about running. I didn't feel like it was some profound book as I was reading it, but when I stopped reading it, I continued to think about it. I think it's really about the atmosphere that was created in this book is why it stuck with me. It was very melancholic and lonely. It is about this guy, I believe he is in college, and he meets this other woman, and they make a interesting dynamic. They're both trying to find human connection and purpose in life. It was a sad story, but it's also kind of beautiful, and that's just what I remember of it and why I like it. I would reread it just to feel that type of feeling again. It's a little hard to explain, but I did enjoy this book. And then at number 8 was The Vegetarian by Kang, and Kang was the 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature Award winner, and she is Korean and a female author, so I'm really happy for her. Actually, last summer I visited Korea and was able to see her writing workshop area. I think that's what it was, one of her buildings. It was at nighttime, so it was closed and I wasn't able to go in, but I just thought that was a very full circle moment, because I read this at the beginning of the year, and then I was able to go and see maybe one of the places where she writes things. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it was something Kang related. So this book is about Young-hye, who decides to quit eating meat after having these violent, brutal dreams. And the story is about how this one choice, which seems minuscule to us, the readers, has such a huge impact on the people around her, mainly her husband, her sister, her brother-in-law, and then her parents, her family essentially. They're all people that are trying to control Young-hye, and they view this act of not eating meat as an act of rebellion, because before Young-hye was very submissive to her husband, and obviously that's how society stereotypes and views women as dependent on their male counterparts. So it deals with themes of gender roles, gender stereotypes, and also themes of humanity, what it means to be human. Are humans innately violent? And if Young-hye rejects eating meat, which is inherently a violent act in some sort of way, maybe she is rejecting her humanness, or trying to reject her humanness by not eating meat. And she eventually goes on to stop eating all animal products in general. Honestly, when I first finished the book, the metaphors kind of went over my head, but after going through more reviews on this book, I was able to see how really deep the themes in this book run, and the kind of symbols as well. It was kind of a hard read because you're not in the perspective of Young-hye. It's in the perspective of 3 people, I believe. It's the husband, the brother-in-law, and the sister. And the husband and brother-in-law are disgusting, horrible people. I was honestly very uncomfortable reading their perspectives, but it's, I think, a very unique important book to read, and I can get why Han Gang won the Nobel Prize for Literature. And at number 7 is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Maybe one of the most famous main characters in the literary canon, Holden Caulfield, I think that's how you say his name. He is a teenager and he is a senior. He has been expelled from numerous schools, and he's kind of just at part where you transition from being a child to an adult and you don't really know where you stand. He is very pretentious, angsty type of teenager, as most people that age are. And he's also dealing with these past traumas that are very briefly noted, but they're definitely affecting Holden, but he doesn't realize it. It's not a big part of this book, like him navigating his trauma. It's just showing how it's affecting him in the present. This is definitely a character study book, and you just follow Holden as he goes through New York, aimlessly walking around trying to find human connection or some purpose in life that will tell him what to do to move forward and why he should move forward with his life. He makes some dumb mistakes, gets into situations that probably are not good choices, and ultimately he's just trying to exist in a world that hasn't been very kind to him. I really enjoyed it and I loved Holden. I felt he was a very relatable character. I know that he is very polarizing to readers though. Some people really despise him, but I think his character is really realistic and naturally flawed. And then at number 5 is The Pearl by John Steinbeck. And this was a wonderful book. It's very short, and it was my first Steinbeck that I read. It is set in Mexico, and actually the foreword had something really interesting because I think Steinbeck wrote this book intending it to be a movie, so it's kind of written with like a movie script in mind. That may be completely wrong, but there was an interesting story attached to when this and how this book was written. So if you're going to read this book, I recommend not skipping the foreword. But anyways, it is about this man who lives in a coastal town in Mexico. He's very poor, his neighbors are poor. He has a wife and a newborn baby, and every day he goes out to fish to find some sort of source of income. Like that's his way of earning a living. And one day, as he is fishing, he catches this huge, big pearl. And this pearl to him symbolizes opportunities and success and fortune for the future. But when he goes to sell this pearl, he realizes he's not getting the deals that he wants. He knows that the pearl is worth more, but these people are trying to trick him into giving him less money for the pearl. So he decides to keep the pearl for now and sell it later so he can get a greater value. However, his choice to wait and get even more money for the pearl, when the initial number was still a lot, kind of opens the floodgates for misfortune. I guess this book kind of goes into themes of the cycle of poverty and greed, but you can't really blame the main character for wanting to get the most out of this opportunity that is once in a lifetime. Yeah, my first Steinbeck, and I loved it, so I'm definitely going to continue reading his works in the future. Now we're going to the top 5. At number 5 is Outline by Rachel Cusk. So I read this at the end of January, and I'm a type of person to make seasonal TBRs and also read books that kind of give off the mood of the current season I'm in. But at the end of January, I went to the Dominican Republic for a few days. So I picked up this book, which is kind of a summary book, and that was a really good decision. This is definitely a literary fiction book. It is complete character study, no plot, which I love. So it is about this woman who is at a middle point in her life. She is recently divorced and has a few kids, and she's either a writer or an artist. I kind of forget which one she was. I think she was a writer, but I'm not completely sure. But she goes to Greece to teach these few students within her program about either art or writing, I'm not sure. You follow her from the moment she gets on the plane to the moment she leaves Greece. The conversations she has with people, both new and old, and familiar and stranger to her. And the conversations she has with people are just so real and raw. This book goes through the triumphs and failures of humans that they experience in their daily lives. If someone were to tell me that this book was based off of real people, I would believe them because they seem so real. And also just like the setting of Greece, the glittering water, the beautiful architecture, it was just wonderful. And this book is actually part of a quartet, I think. So I know the next book is called Transit, so I might read that in the summer. It follows the same main character, I think, as she's in London, where she lives. At number 4 is I Who Have Never Known Men by Jaqueline Harman. And this is a dystopian novel, but not in the traditional sense that you may be thinking. And I'm sure you have heard of this book if you're anywhere in the book sphere on the internet. It got really popular in recent years, although I know it was published in like the 90s and then it was translated to English I think a few years back, so that's why it got so popular recently. So this book is about this group of women who are trapped in an underground bunker, and they are caged there. The guards are in front of them making sure that they don't escape, and the character that you follow is the youngest, and she has no memories of the life before, and while all the other women around her who are older than her do. So it poses the question whether it's better to have lived a fulfilled life and then lose it and then to keep those memories, or is it better to have never had those lived experiences, and that way you can be more satisfied with the present. But the fact is, none of them are satisfied with the present. It's a book about womanhood, solitude, what happens when you're isolated and lose the people that are close to you. Where do you find refuge? Do you even find refuge anywhere? How do you keep on living when everything that was important to you is stripped away? It was a wonderful book, very much unlike anything I've read so far, and I usually don't love dystopian books, but this was really good. And the main character was also so interesting to read about. Her perseverance was really admirable. And then finally, at number 3 is Pachinko by Min-jin Lee. And this book is a family saga. It follows this Korean family across 3 generations during the time of Japanese colonization of Korea. And it says here that Pachinko is a story of love, sacrifice, ambition, and loyalty. From the bustling street markets to the halls of Japan's finest universities to the pachinko parlors of the criminal underworld, Lee's complex and passionate characters, strong, stubborn women, devoted sisters, and sons, fathers shaken by moral crisis, survive and thrive against the indifferent arc of history. This is a fiction book, but I think there's a lot of truth in it and captures the lived experiences of many Koreans at this time. At number 2 was All the Lovers in the Night by Mieko Kawakami. I just love Japanese translated fiction because I feel like the sentences are so simple, yet they are packed with so much. I know it's translated, so it must read differently in Japanese, but the feeling that all Japanese translated fiction books that I've read have is nothing like I ever read in originally written English books. So this book is about a woman. I think she's in her 30s or 40s, and she is a copywriter. She lives a very quiet, kind of solitude type of life, and she doesn't really meet new people or have any friends. But one day, as she is walking down the street, she catches her reflection in the window and is really disappointed by what she sees. The woman that is looking back at her has done nothing with her dreams or made any progress in living a fulfilled life. she's kind of recycling through the same routine every day. So she decides there that she's going to change that. You follow her as she has in a relationship with another man and kind of her search for human connection and whether she's able to achieve it. It was a wonderful, quiet book, and I felt so, I guess, sad while reading it, but when I finished this book, I felt very hopeful. So I liked that Kawakami ended the book on that note. It was also quite a big plot twist, and I was very shocked. It was just very surprising, and I was not expecting that. And finally, at number 1 was My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. I was able to get this book for free because I completed my local library's summer reading challenge, and for that you were able to get a free book. So I'm so happy that I have this in my hand because I also have the second book because my friend gifted it for me earlier this year for my birthday. But I read this book in the summer, and that was definitely the perfect time to read it. It's set in Naples, Italy, during the 1950s, I believe, the period where Italy transitioned from a dictatorship to a democracy. So there's kind of that political aspect in this book. I'll just read the synopsis here. The story of Elena and Lila begins in the 1950s in a poor but vibrant neighborhood on the outskirts of Naples. Growing up on these tough streets, the two girls learn to rely on each other ahead of anyone or anything else, as their friendship, beautifully and meticulously rendered, becomes a not always perfect shelter from hardship. Ferrante has created a memorable portrait of two women, but My Brilliant Friend is also the story of a nation. Like in Pachinko, this book is packed with so much story, and I loved it. It wasn't even plot focused, actually, as Pachinko could be seen as, because you're just following the lives of these two women as they navigate through childhood to adulthood, mainly their adolescence. With any friendship, of course, they go through challenges in their relationships, and their friendship is put to the test to decide whether they can overcome those hardships and continue to being the friends they were as kids. And this was just great. I've never read a book that was translated from Italian or was set in Italy, so I really, really enjoyed this book. Like, the setting of this book was just so wonderful. It reminded me of like Outline, that was set in Greece, but just like the same type of ethereal vibe that I got from this. I can kind of live vicariously through these characters. Yeah, so I love this book. This was my favorite book of 2025, and I'm going to be reading the second book, The Story of a New Name, in 2026 in the summer. So I have been talking for quite a bit, but I wanted to briefly talk about the books I'm planning to read in 2026 and also just my general reading plans. A lot of the authors on my list here are people that I've never read books from before, and I've been wanting to read from them for a really long time. So in my literature class, we are doing a project of an author study, so we're going to read 2 books from the same author and kind of research them. And for that, I decided to pick up The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong, and then later after I finish this book, I'm going to read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. Ocean Vuong is an author I've been wanting to read since, I think, 7th grade. I feel like On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous was really popular during that time. If you're unfamiliar with Ocean Vuong, he is a poet foremost, and from the first few chapters that I read of this book, I can definitely tell that. The writing is so lyrical, and the metaphors like that are in every other sentence it's so good. That is why I don't feel like I can fly through this book. I feel like it needs my complete attention. In fact, I think I read the first chapter like 3 or 4 times because there was just so much in the first chapter that I feel like I couldn't miss any of it. Let me describe it very briefly though. It is about this 19-year-old boy, and at the beginning of the novel, he decides that he does not want to live anymore. And as he is ready to jump off this bridge, this elderly woman stops him and convinces him not to jump. And this act kind of sets off their relationship. So the elderly woman has dementia and she has no one to take care of her, so the boy in this book becomes her caretaker. It is set in Connecticut in a old small town that doesn't have much going for it. It says here that the Emperor of Gladness shows the profound ways in which love, labor, and loneliness form the bedrock of American life. On the back, it actually says that this book was inspired by Ocean Vuong's time as a fast food server, which I find is really interesting. So yeah, I'm so excited to continue reading this. And because it is for a school project, I will be annotating it, and that is why I actually bought this book. It's one of the first books I've bought from an independent bookstore, so I'm really happy about that. And I never annotate my books, but I decided, I need to for this class. And I decided to show you what I have in my makeshift kind of annotating pencil case. So I have notepad, or what are these called? Sticky notes here. I can stick them into the book and write in it. And then I have these tabs, sticky tabs from Kyobo bookstore in Korea. And then I just have like a couple writing utensils. So I first have a yellow highlighter, a really thin pen, and then another kind of thicker pen. We'll see how annotating goes because I've never annotated before and I feel like it might take me out of the story, but if that does, I'll just read it and then annotate it later. So that is the first book of 2026 I'm planning to read. But there are other 9 books that I want to give top priority to, and I'll just list them like super quickly. The Secret History by Donna Tartt, Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, The Story of a New Name, as mentioned earlier, Play It As It Lays by Joanne Didion, Human Acts by Hung Gang, M Train by Patti Smith. I read Just Kids like 2 years ago and I love that memoir. Patti Smith is so admirable, I love her. The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector, and Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. I've never read a Sally Rooney book and I've heard a lot of mixed things, but it seems like the general consensus on Intermezzo is that it's very good. I know it follows like 2 brothers dealing with the grief of their passing father, something along those lines. And then just general goals I want to hit with my reading this year is read at least 1 nonfiction, like a memoir. And also, I have so many authors on here that I've never read before, like James Baldwin, Clarice Lispector, Donna Tartt, like great classic authors. So this is very exciting list. I also want to quickly show my planner for 2026. This is not completely set up because I usually draw the book covers of the books I want to read for the new year, but I haven't yet gotten to that. I did that last year and it came out really well. I do it with watercolor, so I definitely wanted to do it again. It's just very time consuming. In fact, actually, I have started with these 2. This one isn't finished. I need to like color in the star, but I have this one, which is Emperor of Gladness. I just think it came out really cute, but this took me forever, just these little 2 to try to get the colors right, and also like my watercolor is a little bit cheap, so it's a little bit harder to work with. But I just wanted to like show off my planner because I love how I decorated it. This is from the John Darien sticker book, and this one as well, and I love the Moleskine planner. This is my 2nd year using the weekly Moleskine planner. But I think that is it for this video. I was able to go through all the books I loved in 2025 and it was a lot of fun. I was able to share the books I'm planning to read in 2026. It's just nice to put that out there in the world. I definitely have more video plans in the future. Like one of the ones I'm planning to do is maybe a journaling ecosystem video. I know those were really popular. Actually, I've seen a lot for 2026 because I have a lot of journals with specific purposes. And kind of my two favorite hobbies is journaling and reading. Journaling slash drawing. So I'd love to bring those to the world as well. But I want to thank you for watching, and I hope to see you very, very soon.